Hello everybody. Well, one of the things that's come to my attention in the last couple of weeks is that there's quite a number of skeptics out there. A large number of people have contacted me here and on Twitter and on Facebook and on email and all kinds of different forms and venues expressing support, and in many cases basically telling me that they have a similar, they believe the same way, but they are kind of secretive about it. They haven't come out of the closet, so to speak. And I wanted to try and help those who are in that situation. Because the thing that people keep on telling me is that they're afraid of controversy. They're afraid of confrontation, especially with family and friends. And it's true. Our beliefs, or our lack of beliefs, tend to engage the emotions of others. And they will come after us. Let's let this train go by. Now here's the trick. You have to remember that there's really only two things to be concerned about in any argument. One is the strength and position of your own stance, and two, the relative strength and position of the stance of the person you're talking with. Now, the problem that happens, the reason so many healthy arguments turn into fierce, combative debates, is because people lose track of that, and they go off and it's like two fencers, two sword fighters that start their duel in a small arena. You know, maybe it's the arena where they're fighting for the honor of a maiden, right? And the maiden and the court of the king are watching, and they're going to duel it out and have an honorable duel to the end. They have an objective, they have a reason to be there, and they're going to fight it through. Now, but their emotions, and they can start fighting in that arena, and their emotions take over, and despite the rules of engagement, they begin to fight dirty, and maybe they leave that forum and wander out into the streets, and one of them breaks his fencing sword and grabs an axe. And now they're using different weapons, and now they're on the rooftops, fighting from the rooftops, beating one another with clubs. Now they're out in the fields or fighting through a river. And you see what I mean? They lose track of what they started to talk about and wander off into all kinds of foreign fields, losing complete track of the reason that they were having a discussion. And that's what happens whenever we engage in emotionally charged topics in an argument. So the way to avoid that, and you can imagine how that happens with religion. We start talking about one particular point, and it leads off into 1,000 others where the emotions are raised and people are yelling at one another and they hate each other forever and never talk again. The way to avoid that is to keep track of where you are, of the topic at hand. It's almost like sumo wrestlers. As soon as you step outside the ring, the debate is over. Now, for us as skeptics, if you believe as I do, that basically we look at, if you saw my video yesterday, what was that called? Atheists are not against God. If you saw that video yesterday, I made the analogy that, like the atheist and the theist are two people sitting on top of a hill and they're looking up at the stars, and the atheist looks up and says, I see nothing but twinkling lights and an empty void. And the theist looks up and says, I see God. Now, if you can keep that as your premise, on both sides, my premise as an atheist is I look up, I see nothing but matter and emptiness, and the theist looks up and says, you see God. If you can keep that in mind, then it becomes really simple. As an atheist, you can stride into a room full of theists. You can stride right on in with comfort and ease, because your proposition is one that is so simple, and really, you are not making much of a proposition at all. You're making a proposition to look at them and say, I see nothing. I think we should keep looking. Now, there's nothing to be said to that. The theist is going to get angry at that, but there's nothing that they can't take that apart. They can't really pound you on the head with that, because you're not making much of a statement at all. On the other hand, the statement they're making, they look up and they see the same thing and say, I see God. Now, they've got some work cut out for them. As has been said by other people, extraordinary claims require either extraordinary evidence or I'll add the application of faith. Now, if they're going to try and prove it to you, and you have to be clear to one another. You have to one great way to have a good debate is to be clear on your terms. And so when you sit down at the table with the theist, you need to say, hey, listen, I'm an atheist. Faith doesn't work for me. I don't go the route of faith. for the most part, if you do that, if you clear that up at the beginning of your debate, you don't have anywhere to go. I mean, you basically might as well get up and walk away, because that's what most religion is based on. But okay, now let's say that they want to continue the debate anyway. Then, and they understand that faith won't do it for you. Then that means that they have to convince you through evidence, and that is where it gets interesting. You as a theist can walk into that room full of believers, sit down and say, listen, okay, I'm here to talk to you guys about religion and lack their God and lack thereof. I'm an atheist. I look up at the night sky, I see nothing, and faith ain't going to do it for me. Let's hear your side. Pretty much, they're going to get angry. They're going to begin hurling ideas at you, and they're going to get increasingly more angry. This has been my experience, at least. And what will eventually happen is they'll begin to try to lead you outside of your ring. Remember, that's the key point. Stay within your, like you're a sumo wrestler. Stay in that little ring there. You know, that premise that you've made, which is I look up, I see nothing, and faith doesn't do it for me. They're going to try to lead you outside of that to try and, for example, say, well, I do see God up there, and you have to prove to me that just because you don't see it, that means that God isn't there. It's a confusing thing. Don't buy it. They're going to basically try to throw it back on you and say, okay, I want you to try to explain how lack of evidence means there is no God. And that's not fair game. They're the ones making the extraordinary claim. It's up to them to demonstrate that that's the case. Stick to your guns. Remind them that you are basically making a claim that you don't see any evidence for an orchestrated intelligence behind the universe, and faith won't do it for you. And if they want to have you join their club, they need to give you something that will convince you otherwise. And if you can stick to your guns, stay in that ring there, unless some really good reason is given for you to step out, you'll be all right. And you can stride into any circumstance with anybody and talk about just about anything related to these complex issues. You don't need to be afraid, but you do need to keep an open mind. Listen to their arguments. Don't just dig yourself into a hole and throwing rocks at any circumstances. That then you've basically entered into the same problem. So you have to listen to what they're saying, but always be ready to change. Always be ready to concede defeat. But always be prepared to back up the stand that you've made when you feel it is the correct one. Well, I hope that's been helpful, everybody. It's time for me to get to work, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Don't be afraid. It's just a big wide world out there, and our position is that we just need to keep on looking. Let's look some more. See you later.